Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of boards, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my D&D 2024 player class series. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the Rogue class. Hey, it's me from the D&D 2024 Player's Handbook, including the class breakdown, differences between the 2014 version, my top 5 species and backgrounds, and my personal subclass rankings. And if you stick around to the end of this video, we're going to build a brand new Rogue character using the 2024 rules via the Roll20 character monster. If you enjoy these D&D videos and want to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. The Rogue got a pretty good buff, I think, in the 2024 edition. Not that I think the Rogue was necessarily underwhelming. It's a very classic archetype, one of the pillars of a balanced party. The Rogue is built around, of course, the sneak attack feature, which is functionally the exact same. However, in the 2014 version, the Rogue was like the only class that didn't have any kind of resource that recharged on resting, which is kind of weird to think about. Like, obviously, all the spellcasters, which like half the classes are spellcasters, even more if you include some of their subclasses, they've got spells that they can worry about recharging and tactically decide when to use and when to hold on to. And then there's also a bunch of other, monks have their focus points now. Even fighters have like second wind and action surge. Barbarians have the rage. Sneak attack, rogue had nothing like that. Sneak attack isn't some kind of, limited resource or something. It's something they can always get off once per turn. So one thing I was looking for with the new version is giving them some kind of thing that, like, some kind of resource or thing that they can use that they can actually recharge and at least like expand their gameplay a little bit. Not that I thought it was boring before, but it also took a lot of creativity on the player's part on how to utilize stealthing and sneaking and ambushing and all these kind of tools that the player has to be kind of more aware of what they're doing, which is interesting that they actually mark the Rogue as a low complexity player character, because I think it has the potential to actually be one of the most complex player characters, right up there with all the spellcasters, because of all the kind of working with the DM and trying to figure out how best to use your class that's maybe not necessarily baked in directly to the rules itself. Although I do think the rules are about stealthing and hiding, for example, are a lot more straightforward and more clearly defined in the 2024 rules, even if they're kind of functionally the same. The Rogue is built around dexterity, which should be no shock there, because all of your stealth checks, everything is based around dexterity. Dexterity is also a great stat to have that be your focus, because of course dexterity in D&D is your armor class and your initiative score, so it matters a whole ton when it comes to just a stat that you want to have like good in general, and to have that also be where all your like weapon powers come off of, assuming you're using, of course, finesse weapons, which you're going to want to, because only finesse weapons and then ranged weapons are actually going to proc with your sneak attack. Also, you should play Rogue if you like stealth. No argument there. I usually have to argue about what the breakdown is for the class, but nope, Rogue definitely. If you like stealth, you should play Rogue. So the Rogue, based around dexterity, we mentioned. The D8 makes us a little bit squishier, but still equal to a monk. Dexterity and intelligence are saving throws. Intelligence, one we don't see too often, and sometimes it does come into play against like mind flayers and other psychic creatures. Dexterity, of course, is probably the single best saving throw proficiency to get, and we become the best player character later on around our mid-levels about trying to avoid any kind of fireball type abilities when we take evasion. Skill proficiencies, we get 4. That is more, I'm pretty sure that's more than any other class. Now, somebody like a bard, they get jack of all trades and they get expertise, so they can also be up there in terms of just being good at skills in general. But I don't think anybody gets to choose 4 baked into their class itself. And of course, we have a list of just some of the best, most useful skills here. So a huge plus, which is why even if you're not going Arcane Trickster, it's probably good to not have intelligence be your dump stat here. Unless you want to be a pure like charismatic face rogue, and then obviously you can put all your skills in the charisma skills. But just because you're going to end up having some pretty good skill checks here, and intelligence fuels a lot of your different skills. So that's something to think about. And you get expertise pretty soon, which allows you to become even better at various skills. But most of us are going to choose, probably the roguish skills like stealth, deception, and sleight of hand. Weapon proficiencies, we get simple and martial weapons, all simple weapons, and then only martial weapons that have the finesse or light property, which is fine, because if you're not taking a finesse weapon, you really shouldn't be a rogue. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no real build for rogue that doesn't involve a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon, because sneak attack requires one or the other. And there's no point really taking a rogue, I don't think, if you're not taking advantage of sneak attack. That's the whole function. It's like going barbarian and not going with rage for some reason. Like, that's your whole thing. So perfectly fine there. Armor is only light armor, but our dexterity should be pretty good to where us with light armor should be equivalent to somebody with, probably medium armor, maybe not quite heavy. And we can't use shields. So we are going to be a little bit squishier, but we're going to be more dexterity and more nimble. So that should help at all. Sorry, it should help a little bit more. Starting equipment is kind of mid-range. We get 100 gold pieces to start, or we can start with leather armor, 2 daggers, short sword, and a short bow with some arrows. I think that's a pretty good mix of equipment. So at level 1, we can automatically sneak attack at level 1, which is great. Not automatic, but what we have to do for sneak attack, which is, I believe, the same as the 2014 version. I believe this is all the exact same, which is you deal extra damage if you have advantage on the attack roll, or you're within 5 feet of an ally and that ally isn't incapacitated. You cannot have disadvantage on the attack roll, even if you've canceled out that disadvantage, via having advantage on something else. I believe. Well, actually, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe somebody can help me out on that. You don't need advantage on the attack roll at least one, and you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. So if you've canceled out the disadvantage, I don't think you can still get the sneak attack off. So anytime you've got disadvantage, it's a really bad news for the rogue. Also, you have to be using either finesse or ranged weapon, and then you get to plug in extra damage dice. It starts off as a 1d6, but it scales pretty quickly. Every other level, it basically goes up by a d6. The rogue, even though they want to be attacking every single round, only gets the one attack. So the rogue, more than any other class, really, really, really cares about hitting with their attack and also making sure they get that sneak attack off every single time. Also get Thieves' Cant, which is kind of a unique language you can use to, talk to other thieves, I guess. Weapon Mastery, of course, is new to 2024, and all the martial classes get Weapon Mastery. This really helps the rogue because there's some really good weapon masteries that we can combo with the rogue that, especially, like, for example, give us advantage on another attack, which goes well if we're using a light weapon. We can then use that combo with dual weapon wielding, for example, using a bonus action to attack, and that way we can kind of pretend like we have extra attack in order to really make sure we get our sneak attack. Again, sneak attack only once per turn, but if we miss with our first strike, then obviously trying to hit with our second strike and then getting sneak attack more than offsets the fact that our offhand weapon is going to do less damage than our primary weapon. So we still get 2 weapons and we can change them on a long rest, which is nice. Level 2, Cunning action means we get a bonus action, dash, disengage, or hide. This is also kind of a signature ability of the rogue, same as the 2014 version, and really frees up our bonus action. Unfortunately, a lot of times we're going to try to use that bonus action to dual wield because, again, we can't wield a shield. All of our stuff's one-handed. We pretty much might as well be dual wielding, basically. I'm not sure why you wouldn't dual wield, honestly. The offhand weapon. Now, however, there is a case where you might not want to attack with that offhand weapon because we've got Cunning action where we can bonus action to do a lot of other really useful things. Disengage gets us out of a nasty area, and then hide allows us to take advantage of all the cool invisible conditions that hide grants if we can do that during combat as part of our bonus action. Because, again, you really want to use your action to attack every single round so you can get that sneak attack off. Level 3, of course, is our subclass. Level 3 also gives us steady aim. This was added, I believe, in Tasha's as a way for the rogue to gain advantage themselves without necessarily needing to do... basically, the only reason you would normally get the sneak attack off is because you have an ally that was within 5 feet and you're attacking together. Steady aim allows you to, as a bonus action, give yourself advantage on the attack roll, which, of course, if you hit, triggers your sneak attack. However, you can only use it if you haven't moved that turn, and then when you use it, your speed becomes 0. So 90% of the time, this is for characters who are using a ranged attack, right? And it even is the name, the steady aim is like you aiming with a ranged attack. However, you don't have to technically use it as a ranged attack. You could be in melee, and you could use a bonus action to give yourself advantage on the attack roll, just because you really want to hit and get that sneak attack off, and then you won't be able to move afterwards. You can totally do that. It is a bonus action, which, again, that comes up against having to do our offhand bonus attack or being able to do our cunning action, so that's a bummer. And, of course, it limits our movement quite a bit, but it is there for when we really need to hit, and especially if we really need to get our sneak attack off. Most of the time, it's probably when you're ranged attacking is when it's going to come up, and especially you're ranged attacking somebody who is far away, doesn't have any ally near them. You can steady aim, just plant your feet and just attack at a range. That's when you're really going to want to use the steady aim. If you're in melee, I imagine you're probably going to have other things to do your bonus action for. Level 4 is our ASI. Level 5, we finally get to something that's a brand new feature in the 2024 edition called Cunning Strike. I like Cunning Strike, although it doesn't quite solve the problem of the rogue not... I'd say it's a problem of not having like a rechargeable thing, basically, some kind of class resource. So the way Cunning Strike works is that when you sneak attack, you can forego some of the damage of your sneak attack in order to do this extra effect, which the three choices you get are poison, trip, and withdraw. You don't have to choose them when you level, by the way. These are always available, but you can only do one for every time that you sneak attack. And by the time you get this feature at level 5, your sneak attack is worth 3d6. So you just spend one of those 1d6s to do the other effect. So in other words, if you want to do the poison effect, you would only do 2d6 damage instead of 3d6, but then you can add the poison, which forces the target to make a constitution saving throw. It's based off of your dexterity, which is great, because our dex is probably pretty good. And if they fail, they have the poisoned condition for 1 minute. They do get to repeat the save at the end of each turn. The poison condition, of course, forces them to have disadvantage on all of their attacks. That is very much worth it if you're fighting somebody that's going to last for a couple rounds. And especially if they have a bad con save. In fact, between that and trip, they're both good effects. They're both very similar, but they both force different kind of saving throws. So I imagine the smart rogue, hopefully without metagaming knowledging too much, you will be able to tell, do I want to force them to make a con save and be poisoned, or force them to make a dex save and have the prone condition? In other words, are they big and burly, or are they kind of a nimble bastard? By the way, the poison effect, you have to have a poisoner's kit on your person. That's worth like 50 gold pieces that you do not necessarily start with, and I don't think any of the backgrounds or anything starts you with a poisoner's kit either. So something to think about, where you have to actually purchase a $50 like like piece of equipment to unlock one of your basic class abilities. Trip, only viable for large or smaller targets, forcing a dex save or have the prone condition. Prone is a little bit better because not only do you force them to have disadvantage, but now you and all your allies have advantage on them if you're in melee. For range attackers, however, you have disadvantage on them. And unlike the poison condition, prone, they don't have to make a save. They just have to spend half their movement to stand up, which can be useful, I guess, if you're like hitting somebody at range, for example, and then it slows them down. So there's definitely points where you'd want to do one or the other, and it's cool. And I like it tactically, right? Anything that gives me like the ability to sit back and tactically make a choice, like, oh, do I want to just do all the damage, or do I want to add this other cool debuff on there? So I think this is a big thumbs up and a cool buff for the rogue. The withdraw ability, I think, is a lot more limiting because we already have a bonus action, disengage and dash. But for 1d6, it allows us to, as part of the attack, basically get a free disengage and also move up to half our speed. Now, the advantage there is now we don't have to use our bonus action to do the cunning action of whatever we want. We can do withdraw and then also do like a bonus action hide. Or if we really need to move, we can do a bonus action dash. Or we could use a bonus action, you know, whatever. We can't use steady aim because we can't use that with move. We could also use our offhand bonus action. So I guess it frees up our bonus action sometimes. I don't know how often. It doesn't feel like I would use that as much because I've got cunning action. I'd rather do all these other cool abilities. But maybe after playing a 2024 rogue, I'd be like, oh yeah, this actually comes in handy really well if I'm like super out of position or something. Then that's pretty neat. We also don't lose our old level 5 ability. I think it was level 5 ability, which is Uncanny Dodge. Whenever we see an attack that's an attack roll coming in, we can use our reaction to have the damage against you. Very, very good ability. However, I will say a rogue's attack of opportunity is also very good because, remember, sneak attack is not once per round, it's once per turn, which means that you can absolutely use your attack of opportunity reaction, and if you hit, then you get off your sneak attack damage, which is humongous. Now, of course, there's no way for you to force an enemy to trigger attacks opportunity unless you have an ally casting Dissonant Whispers or something, which is another fabulous combo. So yes, it's good, but it does take your reaction, which kind of makes it a little bit less good because I think the rogue has such a good reaction in general. But man, if somebody's coming at you with a lot of damage, you know, just a nasty thing that's going to do a bunch, then yeah, this is probably going to be, especially if it keeps you alive. Level 6 is going to be our level 6 is expertise. That's right. So at level, we already get, okay, I skipped that one. Level 1, that's all right. We get expertise for 2 of our skills, which again, we've got proficiency in 4 skills from our class. And of course, our background gives us another 2. So we've got 6 skill proficiencies and 2 of them expertise, which means we add our proficiency bonus again. Basically, it doubles. At level 6, we get 2 more skill proficiencies that are expertise. So we are just really good at a lot of skills. We have a certain set of skills. Not the most exciting level, though, admittedly. Level of 7, Evasion is incredible. It is the anti-fireball. When you're subject to an effect that allows you to make a dex saving throw to take only half damage, now you take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw and only half damage if you fail, which means the worst you can do is take half damage. Absolutely amazing. Dex saves, probably one of those common things. All of the damage spell, not all of them, I guess, Cloud Kill, and there's some that are Constitution saving throw based, but most of them are going to be dex saves. All the big explosive ones are dex saves. All the most traps are dex saves. Very, very amazing ability. Everybody who's played D&D knows Evasion is just absolutely killer, so super good. Also doesn't even require a reaction or anything. It's just always on ability. As long as you're not incapacitated, which if you're incapacitated, you've got bigger problems, most likely. Level 7, we also have reliable talent, though, which is we basically can't roll less than a 10 on any ability check that uses one of our proficiencies. And I just said how many skills we've got proficient in. Pretty dang useful because we're not going to fuck up any stealth checks, maybe persuasion checks. Honestly, it's kind of a headache for DMs because, you know, you've got this amazing roll that's like, hey, make the check. And I'm like, okay, but we all know I'm going to get at least like a 22 on it or something. So it's kind of weird as the player, like, oh yeah, I want to show off my roll. But the DM, you're just like, all right, well, fuck you. I know you're going to make the roll anyway, so who cares? So I have mixed feelings about this as a DM point of view. I feel like this kind of ability, this would have been a great example of the thing that gives me the limited resource for, or give me the like, hey, it's per proficiency bonus or something. In other words, don't just say like, oh, well, of course I'm amazing at this all the time. But be like, hey, I'm going to make sure I'm going to be amazing at this one check. This, you know, make me spend like a finite resource. So I feel like maybe this one goes a little bit too far with reliable talent. It doesn't seem like really powerful on paper, but having played with people that have an equivalent of reliable talent, I think it was a bard that had this. It is very annoying as a DM that they just kind of always have that always on. Level 8, of course, another ASI or feat. Level 9 is in their subclass. Level 10, I think we get another, yeah, so we actually borrow from Fighter and get like another additional ASI or feat improvement, which is, I think, kind of lame. I'd rather just have cool rogue abilities. Level 11, finally improves our Cunning Strike, but it doesn't give us new abilities yet. We have to wait till level 14 for that. Instead, we just get to choose 2 of the strike effects instead of only having to pay for 1. So we can do both a poison and a trip, or a withdraw and a poison, whatever kind of multiple combos, which is cool for sure, but we have to wait till level 11 just to be able to do 2 of them at one time. 14, finally we get additional moves. I'm so upset that we have to wait till level 14 to get more cool moves. You know, I was expecting level up and have them cost all kinds of different amounts. But I'm glad it's here, I guess. So for 2d6, we can daze, which forces a con save. And I think this is the Mind Spike spell where a target can only either move, take an action, or a bonus action. This is really, really good for monsters to do on players, by the way. I think it's less good for players to do on monsters. I have not seen, obviously, the new monster manual. We're doing these videos before having access to that new book yet. But a lot of monsters do not have bonus actions. At least the 2014 monsters don't. And most monsters are going to take the multi-attack action and be able to do all their things. Sometimes, you know, obviously like a Mind Flayer or something, they've got Mind Blast. Like they might have better, cool rechargeable abilities, or a dragon's got its Dragon Breath or something. But you can always fall back on the multi-attack and still do fine. The biggest thing, I guess, is you can't move and then take an action. So it does limit them if they're not in position. But I don't think it's quite as useful for players to do on monsters. However, a monster doing a player, it's absolutely fantastic. It really fucks up players quite a bit because they've got all kinds of cool actions they can do. Obscure forces a dex saver, has the blinded condition till the end of its next turn. This is a little similar to obviously being prone or poison, where you have, actually I guess it's like prone, but I guess the monster can't get out of it, well, until the end of its next. I don't know how different that is from being prone, honestly. I guess you don't have the range attack difference and the melee damage from being prone. They can't just stand up, but it ends at the end of their turn. Anyways, and blinded obviously gives them disadvantage, and I think they fail dex saves or something, but it could come in handy. But still, it costs 3d6. I'd almost rather just prone or poison them for that effect. Knockout, however, is killer. It does cost 66. At level 14, I believe we have 7d6 worth of sneak attack damage. So it's most of our sneak attack damage. This averages out to, what, like 20 damage we're not doing or something. However, we get to force a con save or literally knock the target unconscious for a minute. Unfortunately, they do get to repeat the save at the end of each of its turns, but depending on the kind of creature, a lot of creatures do have good con saving throws. This finally gives you that cool rogue ability of, like, you know, the classic like knocking somebody unconscious from behind, right? It's the Assassin's Creed thing that we want rogues to do forever. So we have to wait till level 14. We do have to be able to sneak attack them, and the enemy gets to make a con saving throw. Those are a lot of things that have happened. But then to be able to just drop them unconscious. Now, the unconscious condition ends if they take damage, which is a big deal. First of all, if you're only fighting against one enemy, well, the DM just ends combat. You all surround the enemy and all just get a super ultra mega attack on them. As part of a surprise, I guess. I guess it's an advantage on initiative or something in 2024, but that almost just ends the whole combat, I think. Or if it's just one enemy amongst many, then you've basically taken that enemy out until they can make that save. So as long as nobody's doing damage, they're gone. I think that's great. I think it's cool that we got that ability, but it does take a few things, and unfortunately, you have to wait till level 14 to get all those. Level 15, I believe we've seen that before, which is proficiency in wisdom and charisma saves, which means at level 15, you've got the two best saves in the game, which is dexterity and wisdom. Level 18, elusive. Enemies cannot gain advantage on you, I think is the same. And then level 20 is pretty similar from 2014. 2014 was, only on ability checks or turning misses into hits. That's right. So if you failed a d20 on an ability check, you could get a 20 on it. Or if you missed something, you could then decide to hit something once per short rest. This time, if you fail any d20 test, you can turn that roll into a critical success or critical hit once per short rest. Pretty awesome, honestly, for a level 20 capstone ability. I really like that. So that is the rogue, mostly the same, but the whole cunning action, cunning strike thing is just all new and just a improvement, basically. I don't think we really lost too much as I'm trying to look at my notes of 2014. Yeah, I'm not really seeing that we lost anything to gain all these, so that's pretty nice. All right, let's go into the subclasses, starting alphabetically with the Arcane Trickster. This is the complex spellcaster, basically the Eldritch Knight fighter, where you get wizard spells. This one got a pretty big buff, even though it's mostly the same. The buff being before, when you took on the spellcasting, you still get the invisible mage hand and some cantrips, but before you chose 3 spells. 2 of them had to be of the illusion and I think enchantment schools, as well as all your future known spells had to be from the illusion or enchantment schools, which, keeps in theme, I guess, with the rogue and how the spellcasting works. So you only got 1 spell that wasn't. That is gone. That limitation is gone in the new 2024 edition. Now you can just use whatever freaking wizard spells. They do have to be a wizard spell. Wizard gives you almost everything, except for the few, like, I guess, cleric or druid stuff. And you have access to a ton more spells. There's no limitation on leveling up how those spells. It's just everything is there for you to take, which makes Arcane Trickster suddenly a lot more interesting and just gives them a lot more abilities. I still would probably choose mostly Illusion Enchantment because I think that is just, again, going with. But if you wanted to take Fireball eventually or all the evocation spells, you could. I think at that point you'd just rather play a wizard though. So I think again, you want to be sneak attacking, right? That's your whole thing. And unfortunately, what would be really fun if they did is if they let you sneak attack off a spell. That would be fucking sick if that was an Arcane Trickster ability. Instead, sneak attack specifically says it has to be a weapon that's a finesse or a ranged weapon. So you can't get your sneak attack damage off, a fireball. Surprise fireball would be absolutely amazing. Although level 9 does say that if you have the invisible condition, which procs off of our hide action now. Remember, we take a DC 15 stealth check as long as we're out of enemy line of sight, and we gain the invisible condition, which doesn't end until we make an attack roll or cast a spell, or basically an enemy uses their action to find us with a perception check. Technically make a sound louder than a whisper, which is kind of a DM prerogative, I guess. Then we have the invisible condition. So as long as we're invisible, so we've hidden or something, then when we cast a spell on a creature, has disadvantage on any saving throw it makes against that spell on the same turn. That's pretty awesome, but I wouldn't be taking a whole lot of spells that would require a saving throw necessarily from creatures. But you could and you don't get to level 9 anyway, so maybe you wait till you're closer to level 9 before you get those spells. But you could take like Sleep or, I don't know, if Fairy Fires on the wizard spell, but like some kind of cool, useful, AoE crowd control spell that'd be a really fun way to open a fight would probably be how I would take advantage of that, but that's not till level 9. I did skip the fact that you get a mage hand. You do get your invisible mage hand still, which can be kind of fun and useful. Now you can also cast it as a bonus action. I think that's different, although before it said you could, I think, do something as a bonus action with the mage hand. I forget what it is in 2014, but I don't know what the point of this is, and I would love for some of you to help me out on this. What kind of things, like what's the point of casting Mage Hand as a bonus action? Like the only thing I can think of is obviously during battle, because the only thing a bonus action matters of is during combat. But then what is the point of casting Mage Hand in battle? It's not really doing anything until later at level 13 we get something, but this is at level 3. I guess if you're, it really depends on the combat encounter, right? Like maybe I had one combat where the players were trying to escape a dungeon with the whole horde of the dungeon coming down on them, and they had to open this portcullis by cranking the giant portcullis crank wheel thing, and they had to use actions to do that. I guess maybe I could be like, okay, well, the Arcane Trickster Rogue can do as a bonus action with their Mage Hand, so as long as not more than 10 pounds that they're cranking, then they can manipulate that with their Mage Hand or something. Like, you can open doors, you can close doors. Maybe it could be useful if the player's kind of creative about it, and maybe I'm just not creative enough about it, but I think that was a little bit limiting. But then when I saw level 13, I was like, okay, well, this gets more interesting, even though it requires other things. So at level 13, you do get a feature with your Mage Hand, but it's not built into the Mage Hand itself, unlike the 2014 version. Instead, it only procs off of using specifically the trip option of the Cunning Strike sneak attack. So you have to be able to sneak attack first. You have to hit with that sneak attack. You have to choose to forego one of your damage dice to unlock the trip option. And I think whether that actually hits or not, then you can trip another creature as long as they're within 5 feet of the hand. So suddenly we care about where the hand is in combat, which normally I don't think you don't give a crap. Which is interesting. That's cool. We went to level 13 to get it, though, and I wish it was just part of the Mage Hand itself versus having to proc off the Cunning Strike as well. Level 17 is still an amazingly cool ability. That you can basically use a reaction to absorb a spell being cast at you and then store that spell and be able to cast it yourself. Very, very cool, but not until level 17. But I still like the Arcane Trickster a lot, and I think it got... adding, because the Rogue generally doesn't have a lot of things like this, where it's like a limited resource thing, suddenly just getting spell casting is great. I think that adds a lot to it. And of course, the Wizard spell list, obviously has some really fantastic spells on there. All the ritual spells will be really great for the Rogue as well, and the fact they don't have to take the certain spell schools. Also, do we want to talk about True Strike right now? Because I know folks want to talk about 2 cantrips in 2024. It's the Blade Ward and the True Strike. Both these spells really get people's feedback going, which I appreciate, because this is the kind of stuff I want to talk about and learn about. So True Strike, we've talked about it before, allows you to... It's a cantrip, first of all, and it's a spell that you use, and you make an attack with the weapon as part of the spell's cast. So even though it's a spell, you are attacking with a weapon. Uses your spellcasting ability for the attack and damage rolls instead of strength or dexterity. So if we were a rogue, we would probably be using... if we're an Arcane Trickster and we took True Strike, we'd be using Intelligence for attack and damage instead of our Dex. That's tricky because more than likely our Dex can be really good, but if we're thinking about this ahead of time, we could make our Intelligence our best stat, which would be weird for a rogue. If the attack deals damage, it deals radiant damage or normal damage. So again, I haven't seen the new monster manual yet, but presumably dealing different kinds of damage types would be pretty important. Here's the main kicker, though. If you deal damage, then the attack deals extra radiant damage when we reach higher levels. So it actually scales up like other cantrips do. So suddenly we can deal an extra 1d6 at level 5, or an extra 2d6 at level 11, 3d6 at 17. It's not huge, but it's pretty nice. Normally I would poo-poo the True Strike because every other martial class who attacks is getting extra attack, and more than likely that's going to be better than True Strike. Although we've had some interesting, especially with Monk, I know, monks get bonus action attack, so maybe something like a True Strike becomes more interesting in order to get that kind of scaling damage. But it's tricky because it doesn't combo with extra attack. However, you can see where I'm going with this. Rogue does not get extra attack. Rogue does want to attack every turn. So the Rogue may be the Rogue Arcane Trickster, but maybe not even Arcane Trickster, because there are ways to get a True Strike cantrip without going Arcane Trickster, may be the best class to use True Strike. I may be wrong about that, but I'm thinking that could be a really interesting build because you're just getting extra damage off of it, and also the potential to do radiant damage. However, you have to kind of build for it, because it doesn't say you may use your spellcasting ability. It says you do use your spellcasting ability for attack and damage rolls. So you've got to care about that stat just as much as normally your dexterity. So this can really blow up your whole build. So it's important to talk about this particular spell and cantrip if you're going to take this ahead of time. So Arcane Trickster obviously is one of the ways that you would gain access, because it gives you 3 cantrips, one of which is Mage Hand, and one of which could be a True Strike. The other ways of getting the access to the True Strike cantrip, it's not by saying it too often, is by either taking the Mage Initiate Wizard, which I forgot which background that is. I want to say it's Sage background. Flip through the book real quick. Yes, it's the Sage background, which also gives the ability score of Intelligence, however, does not give you Dexterity. Would give you access to the True Strike cantrip, or you could take the High Elf species, and you can actually change the cantrip after every long rest, which is something I've often forgotten about because it just says prestidigitation on there's the first thing, but then it says, oh, you can actually change whatever cantrip you've got. So you could go with a High Elf rogue, and then you don't even have to go Arcane Trickster. You can go with True Strike from there. So interesting build options for that. All right, moving on to the Assassin. So the Assassin was actually in the player's handbooks, as was the Arcane Trickster. Excuse me. Assassin is a little bit different. Actually, it's a lot of bit different. They really changed things around. The Assassin was kind of wonky in the original player's handbook, and I still think it's just kind of okay, frankly. The Assassin now has advantage on initiative rolls, which is pretty big. I think that's different than the alert feat, right? Because I don't know if that's... God, I talk about these freaking feats all the time. You think I'd be able to remember this stuff? Yes. So alert allows you to add your proficiency bonus to your initiative. So this would actually combo very, very well with alert, because you would not only be able to add your initiative bonus or your proficiency bonus, but you could also have initiative on advantage roll, because you want that advantage. You want to go first, because your other feature at level 3 is that during the first round of combat, you have advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't yet gone. And if your sneak attack hits that target, which, again, you have advantage, so you're getting sneak attack, that target takes extra damage equal to your rogue level, which is nice. But the original 2014 version said if you sneak attack during the first round, you get a auto crit. Or sorry, you don't even need to sneak attack. It's just that when you attacked in the first round, you automatically got a critical hit. That was humongous. That was crazy. So I think this is actually a nerf, because you're just, not only you have to sneak attack this time, which you should be doing anyway, but only plus your rogue level is not that much. However, the advantage on initial rolls, I believe, is new. That part's new. So I guess it's a little bit of a balance there. And you still have advantage on attack rolls against creatures that haven't moved. So, okay, that's thematic with an assassin, but not as powerful as getting an automatic crit for sure. You also do gain a disguise kit and a poisoner's kit and proficiency with them. Hey, there's your free poisoner's kit. We needed that for our stupid Cunning Strike, didn't we? So that's one way of getting it. Then they kind of moved things around. So before they kind of doubled down on like the disguise kit and the, I guess it was the poisoner's kit. Was that the one? Or some kind of mimicry thing where there was like, that was the level 9 and 13 ability. Now, with the assassin, instead of having this like disguise ability at level 9, excuse me, my voice leaves me. Instead, we have we can use steady aim better, I guess, because our speed isn't reduced to 0. So now we can use steady aim, and then you still have to have not moved, I believe, before activating steady aim, but then it no longer kills our speed. We can then still move as part of steady aim. So I guess that's when you could do your like withdraw ability or something. So that's useful. It's interesting that it gets rid of one of the restrictions of our earlier abilities. It does still have masterful mimicry, although I would almost, it's kind of a weird bullet point there. I'm glad they added this other effect, because I mean, if you have a disguise kit, you already have advantage on doing stuff. It's just kind of weird that it also says you can mimic another person's speech, because I would include that as being part of the disguise, I guess, but technically it's not. Like the person's speech or handwriting is things that I guess wouldn't be part of the disguise, but it's all very kind of DM dependent, I think. Level 13 is new, so it used to be that the mimicry part, I think, was at 13, and now that's at level 9. And And now at level 13, we get basically an enhanced version of our Cunning Strike, specifically the poison option, which I like that one. Again, you spend 1d6 to poison the target, force a con save. Now, whenever you do that, they also take 2d6 poison damage whenever they fail the saving throw and ignores poison damage. So you're spending 1d6 to deal an extra 2d6 and poison them. I'm not great at math, but I think that's a net gain. So that definitely encourages you to use specifically that poison option constantly, which is pretty nice. Level 17, I believe, is the same, which is whenever hit with a sneak attack on the first round of combat, the target must succeed in a con save or the attack's damage is doubled against the target. That is pretty nice. But I don't know, Assassin, it's fine. It's just not as quite as exciting as I was hoping from all the assassin-y kind of stuff you can do. It just feels like an assassin should be more of a badass killer, and I'm not quite getting that here, maybe until like level 17, I guess. Like the extra damage does scale, but it's going to take a while before it gets really impressive. Soul Knife. This is not to be confused with the Psy Warrior from the Fighter. Also from Tasha's. I feel like every single class in the 2024 book actually basically has one subclass from Tasha's that is pretty much the exact same, because that's, I guess, when they kind of reach their like subclass philosophy and balance and everything. That being said, I mean, I think it's a cool idea. Just a psychic warrior kind of a thing. But I don't know. The psychic blades just don't feel like they're functionally that interesting until we get to a higher level. So we get a psionic power resource, which, hey, again, that solves the problem of not having a resource available, right? Now we suddenly have dice that we can use. We gain a number of dice, which is, there's a table for that, and they scale up in size. It's pretty much Bardic Inspiration, I think, in terms of how it scales. And then these dice are used to either add to our ability checks, which we have proficiency in, and add the number rolled, potentially turning the failure into success. And the die is not expended if the roll still fails, which is kind of a nice thing on there. Also, we get one of these dice back on a short rest and regain all of them on a long rest. I actually think that's true. Again, this was from Tasha's, not from original 2014. So I think that part is basically the same. I think all this is the same pretty much. Nice feature, by the way. Anytime you can do a thing to add to your rolls, I think is fantastic. Although I'd rather be able to add it to my attack rolls versus my ability checks, because I think we're ability checks. We've already got all this expertise and shit. Like, we're going to be pretty good at our skills, frankly. I don't know how often. I mean, occasionally the dice are going to go against you, but I don't know how often that'll come up. And then Psychic Whispers, we can kind of form this like telepathic communication, which is very useful and very cool. Probably very campaign dependent, but if we're, scouting around or stealthing and looking at stuff, then it can be useful to be able to, silently connect to people. And it equals number of hours equal to your dice rolled. So that should be more than enough. However, our signature ability is Psychic Blades, which allows us to manifest our blades. The one change here is that before the Psychic Blades were only when taking the attack action. I think this was honestly just an oversight, and clearly it's an oversight because they fixed it here. It says, or make an opportunity attack. So again, remember how I talked about earlier how the rogue really likes opportunity attacks so you can get their sneak attacks off? Well, technically, if you read the rules as written in the original Soul Knife, almost said Psychic Warrior, then you only manifested your Psychic Blades on the attack action, which means you couldn't manifest them on an opportunity attack because that's an opportunity attack, not an attack action, and thus you'd have to have like another dagger to pull out or something. It felt really weird, really unthematic, and not how that class was supposed to be played. Well, guess what? 2024 clears up that rule and just says, yeah, you can manifest your blades whenever you're making the attack or an opportunity attack. The blade itself, it's basically a short sword. In fact, I think Vex is actually the same weapon mastery as a short sword. I think I had that tab open. Yes, it is. Vex is literally the same thing with the finesse and light properties. This one actually doesn't have light, now that I think about it. But weirdly, it doesn't have light, but it has a built-in bonus action ability anyway. So I guess it does technically have light. It is thrown, however, with a range of 60 to 120 feet. So as a thrown weapon, it's fantastic. And it does do psychic damage, which can be useful for reasons, I guess. And then it's got basically light, because after you make the attack action, then you can then manifest a second Psychic Blade as a bonus action, and then deal D4 instead of D6, which is functionally having the same thing as like the light action, but it's technically you're manifesting another Psychic Blade, which is cool sounding. It all seems really cool, like visually in my head, but like mechanically, it doesn't seem like it's a whole hell of a lot different than just wielding two short swords, right? Like, I'm not really seeing... the psychic damage, again, can be huge, I guess, especially if the new Monster Manual takes advantage of more vulnerabilities or resistances, unique things in that way. Magic weapons, for example, is no longer a thing, so different damage types might be more relevant. But otherwise, I just don't know at this point what the difference is. Because you still take a bonus action to make the offhand attack. You still have finesse. It's the same. Vex is the same as a short sword, which Vex is the one that I think gives you advantage. Advantage on your next attack roll against that creature, which is you definitely want to be using that bonus action to take, because we don't get extra attack, right? It's the only way we take advantage of the Vex is if we're using our offhand attack to gain advantage. So it just didn't seem that exciting, at least from the beginning. Thematically and role-playing wise, it could be very interesting, though, because the blade vanishes after it hits or misses the target, leaves no mark if it deals damage. So you could, like, range attack people, I guess, and they'd be like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? Like, I'm being stabbed with this, like, psychic blade. I don't know what's going on. Could be kind of interesting, but again, very kind of DM dependent, campaign dependent, if you're taking advantage of somehow, like, getting the drop on people and attacking with these psychic weapons. I guess the other thing is if you plan on being like captured or something, then you can manifest your psychic blades without having to worry about your equipment. But again, all of that's very campaign dependent. Level 9 finally starts getting interesting. So as a side thing, I also hate that they didn't really fix the problem with rogue subclasses, which I thought they were going to do. I thought all subclasses were basically going to get their own progression at the same levels. But that's not the case here. Unfortunately, level 6, we only got like expertise or some dumb shit. I don't know why they did this. Instead, we still have to wait until level 9 to get our next subclass ability, which is a lot of our campaign career progress, frankly. Whenever I'm looking at any kind of class features, I'm always thinking the majority of the gameplay is from like 1 to 12. Anything after that is like, oh yeah, that's nice, but how often do we actually get up there, right? I'm being really realistic about this. So when I look at this going like, yay, we finally get our cool things at level 9, but like our campaign is almost over at that point. I think, your mileage may vary with that, but Soul Blades is a very, very good addition to that, which I wish we had earlier, but and not even necessarily level 3, but that's part of the problem with the subclasses. I wish we got it like level 6 or something. If you make an attack roll with your Psychic Blade and miss the target, you can roll 1 Psionic Energy die and add the number rolled to the attack roll, and only if it's hit is the die expended. Fantastic. Fabulous. Exactly what I want is a self-made Bardic Inspiration for the Rogue. Fucking amazing, because the Rogue does not want to miss with their awesome sneak attack. So that is exactly what I wanted. It's not to level 9. Or we can teleport as a bonus action, expend a psionic die and roll it, throw the blade and be able to teleport. By the time you get it, you're a D8. And the way you teleport is you roll that and it's a number of feet away equal to that times 10. So anywhere between 10 and 80 feet is your teleportation, which it would suck to do this ability as a bonus action and teleport 10 feet away. But it is what it is with the dice. I think you come up with some funny role-playing scenes because of that. But I love these abilities. I just wish we got them sooner rather than level 9. Level 13 gives us our invisibility. Keep in mind, it takes a magic action. We gain the invisible condition for 1 hour, and it does end if we take damage, or if we, after we deal damage or force a creature to make a saving throw. We can do it once per long rest, or we can expend a psionic energy die to get more uses. If there's one class that can get the invisible condition on their own pretty regularly, it's the Rogue. So, like, yes, this seems cool on paper. And again, maybe it would be amazing if I actually played a soul knife up to that level and was like, oh yeah, this is incredibly cool. But I imagine most of the time, I'd rather just do my hide shenanigans. But if you get up to this level, then you'd be like, oh, well, I don't need to. Now I can just, but unfortunately you have to take an action, which is a bummer. But you can gain, you don't have to lose line of sight. If you're in the middle of a giant, arena or something, you'd be like, fuck it, I'm just going to use my psychic veil to turn straight up invisible for an hour and then fucking run away or something, do whatever you need. So I can see where it definitely becomes a very useful emergency button. But I would stick to my guns about, like, if there's one class that needs invisibility access to that, the least it's the Rogue, because you can hopefully mostly do your bonus action hide shenanigans. Level 17, you can add a stun, basically a stunning strike on top of your sneak attack, which is pretty awesome, but the monk's been doing that since pretty early levels, so it's fine, I guess. It also is a resource. You can only do once per long rest or expending multiple psionic dice, so it's fine. I think I want it to be better, because it seems like such a cool idea for a class, and I think it just doesn't get quite as amazing until the higher levels. At least in the early levels, it just feels like you're manifesting like all these amazing cool psychic blades, and you're really kind of just doing the same thing as a normal Rogue, is what it really feels like to me. Finally, we're gonna talk about the Thief, which is of course the default basic Rogue. It's gonna be more roguey, also from the Player's Handbook. It's basically the same, but it's organized, I think, a bit better. I think it has literally like all the exact same abilities, but instead of like paragraphs of information, it's just fucking easy bullet points and it's broken down between actions. So as a bonus action, we can make sleight of hand checks to pick locks or disarm traps with thieves, cools, or pick pockets. We can take the utilize action. All of that's the same. However, stop the brakes. As a bonus action, we can take the magic action to use a magic item that requires an action. That is a new one, and that is amazing. So before we could take a bonus action to use an object action, but this specifically says we can use a magic item with the magic action as a bonus action. So suddenly, your thief rogue wants all your cool wands, all your cool, active ability things, your javelins of lightning, like whatever thing you've got that requires an action to activate, your smoke grenades, I don't know, whatever freaking things you've got. The rogue can do it as a bonus action and then still be able to do their attack with their sneak attack and all that. That is friggin' cool. Also, as part of level 3, you gain a climb speed equal to your speed, which can be incredibly useful. You're not quite Spider-Man, but you're pretty fucking close. And your jump distance uses your dex rather than your strength, which I think should probably be built into all rogues, frankly. But fine. We can make that the thief thing. We got to wait till level 9 to get a new sneak option, which is now built into our Cunning strike. It does require us to, in other words, sneak attack and spend 1d6, which means we're not doing all the other things until we get to level 11. We can do 2 at a time. But now if we have the hide action, if we have the invisible condition from hide, when we attack, it doesn't end that condition as long as we end our turn behind cover. This seems very, very fun and cool and really opens up the possibility of a rogue tactically caring about the battlefield, because how cool is it that you can remain hidden, remain invisible, even while on your turn, you start invisible, you attack the enemy, and then you remain invisible, right? Especially for a long-range rogue, becomes almost, because you can just remain behind cover, pop up, attack them with your super advantage because you're hidden, and then your sneak attack and all that. And then as long as you end your turn behind cover again, you remain invisible. This seems like it would super vex the DM to an insane degree. And all you have to do is spend 1d6 from your Cunning strike option. Now, unfortunately, the one takeaway is you're not doing all the other cool Cunning strike options. You're not doing the trip or the prone, or sorry, there's the same thing, the trip or the poison effects, for example. Until we get to a level 11, then we can use multiple ones. And you may not need to get this every single time, but that seems really, really fun and cool. Almost to where, again, I think it should be baked into the base rogue, but I guess it's hard to differentiate between what is the base rogue versus what is the rogue, but specifically rogue subclass here in the thief. So, but I think that's cool. Super cool buff. Level 13. Here we get really fucking crazy. You can attune to up to 4 magic items at once. Hello, Artificer. Absolutely crazy that the rogue can do this. That obviously goes very, very well with our bonus action use magic items. It's very campaign dependent, right? And all the other things. You can use a magic item. If you use a magic item that expends charges, you can roll a 1d6, and you have a 1 in 6 chance of not even expending a charge. Also, you can use any spell scroll, use intelligence for it, and if a spell scroll is a level 1 or a cantrip, you can just use it without any kind of skill check required. So, very campaign dependent, depending on how much loot you're getting, but the Thief Rogue is a great, great, great character who's going to want all of that loot. And the other players, especially with all the extra stuff, you get to that point in the campaign where everybody's like, oh, I've got all my full attunement slots. We've just got extra stuff. Like the Thief's like, I'll fucking take it. Like I can use all these things, use great advantage of them. It's a neat idea to build the character around like magic items, I guess, because they're just looting shit constantly. It's funny it's called Use Magic Device, which is such a lame title, but I believe that comes from older editions of D&D, where that was either like the skill you had at using literal magic devices or something, but that's literally like a reference to that. And then at level 17, we get to take 2 turns in 1 round of combat. During the first round of combat, however, the second turn is at our initiative -10. But sneak attack, as I've mentioned 1,000 times, once per turn, not once per combat. So that does allow us to technically sneak attack twice in 1 round if we can hit both times, which is pretty amazing. So Thief got a big fucking boost, like a huge buff, which brings us to our subclass rankings. I do love the Thief a lot. I think it got a lot of love. I think I have to give the number 1 choice, however, to the Arcane Trickster, which seems like an easy choice just because they get all the spell access, and it really, if there's one class that needed kind of a little extra stuff in there and can use a lot of support from wizard spells, for example, I think it's the Rogue. And the fact that it did get buffed and no longer is limited to certain spell schools puts the Arcane Trickster at number 1. But man, I'm putting Thief at number 2. Thief sounds actually really exciting for being, and normally I'm pretty poo-poo on the like default class that's kind of boring and doesn't have a whole lot of abilities, but this one does a great job of giving you just some really fantastic abilities and doubling down on like the use of magic items is also really good. I say this as a DM who rewards my players a lot of fucking magic items also, so maybe that's why I'm also seeing the appeal here. Number 3, I'm going to go with the Soul Knife, even though I don't think it's as exciting as I want it to be, but at least it does get better as it levels up and finally reaches its own. Assassin, I'm not sure ever really reaches that point necessarily. It just kind of slightly makes certain things better. Your level 3 ability, I guess, is pretty... If you're only going to take 3 levels of a class, of one subclass, then Assassin might actually be the best one to get the Rogue dip in, interestingly enough, because it's got the most front loaded, like advantage initiative rolls, and then getting advantage on attack rolls during the first round of combat could be very useful for, you know, a lot of marshals, for example, that have decent dexterity. So it might be a good dip, but for a pure rogue, I don't know. Assassin, I think, is the least interesting. So that is my ranking of the... So I'm going to try to close all these tabs now. Okay, so we're on to our backgrounds. Let's talk about backgrounds. Eric, why didn't you have your background set up? That's your bad. Background descriptions. So background, obviously, we care about dexterity a lot. However, I also really like intelligence because I'm really digging that True Strike combo. Intelligence, obviously, is used for Arcane Trickster, and it uses a lot of our skills as well. Alert is very useful by giving us a proficiency bonus. And I mentioned the fact that alert combos very, very well with Assassin. I'm talking about, of course, the origin feats. And I think Lucky may be the single best origin feat for rogues because Lucky gives you that reroll. Make sure I get the wording right on this one. When you roll a d20 for d20 quest, you can spend 1 luck point to give yourself advantage on the roll. So giving yourself advantage would proc your sneak attack, right? Obviously, you have to hit them first, but that would also help you hit targets. And of course, you gain a number of luck points equal to your proficiency bonus. So Lucky, very good because you definitely want to be hitting with your sneak attack. So I think Lucky's probably the single best origin feat for rogues. Skilled, I think, is less useful. Although it would give us more targets for expertise, I guess, but we already have so many skill proficiencies, I'm less interested in skilled. So all that is to say, criminal, appropriately enough, is probably the best background for rogues because it includes both dexterity and intelligence. And the third one is constitution, which is never a bad one to put points into. I think gives you kind of the best mix of stats for the rogue. The alert feat, not as good as Lucky for me for the rogue, but alert is probably the next best one because just being able to go early is very useful. Also, you're going to be rolling pretty good initiatives, and maybe there's a time the alert feat also lets you swap initiative scores. Maybe you want to swap it with your wizard or with your paladin to get them into position first, because one of the awkward things about the rogue, and I know y'all have played rogues, can back me up on this, is you're going really early, and you sit there and go like, well, shit, I don't want to be the first one in there. Not only do I not want to be the first one in there, but I also don't want to go in there and not have an ally near me within 5 feet so I can get my sneak attack off, right? So it becomes so you might want to switch your initiative around to somebody that can take more advantage of that. The one who doesn't want to do that, obviously, is the assassin, because the assassin definitely needs to go early and get advantage on their stuff anyway. But still, alert gives you advantage, so that would just be very good for them. So criminal, I think, is my number 1. Number 2 would be Wayfarer for the reason because it's Lucky, and also I think it's as thematic as criminal. Basically, you grew up on the mean streets by similarly ill-fated cast-offs. We don't have intelligence, unfortunately, which is a big bummer, but we do have dexterity. Wisdom is decent for defensive purposes for us, and then charisma if you want to be more of a face, I guess. It's weird how, I guess it's the toughness of it that growing up the mean streets gives you charisma. But Lucky is such a phenomenal origin feat for the rogue that I think it's going to be my number 2. Number 3, even though Savage Attacker isn't quite as useful, I think is going to be Soldier. It's got Dexterity and Constitution, which are both very good. Savage Attacker just lets you reroll a weapon damage dice, but we're only going to be probably I guess we could attack twice when we're using our bonus action to offhand. So, but our weapon damage is never going to be that big, right? We've always got probably like a D6 or a D4 or something. So it's not going to be a whole lot of variance. I guess it would come into play. We're going to be rolling that low number quite a bit and want to have advantage, try to eke out a little bit more damage out of there. Number 3 for me, because I almost just can't not include it in all of these top 5s, would be the Entertainer. It does include Dexterity. We're probably not really care about Strength. Charisma only for the face. But the Musician feat is just too damn good. It's just too damn good, man. Giving our allies like heroic inspiration every turn is amazing. And then I think for my number 5, it gets a little bit trickier. Sage, again, you could make the Dark Horse pick for just True Strike users because you want to go Arcane Trickster. Or sorry, not Arcane. If you don't want to go Arcane Trickster, take Sage to give yourself the True Strike cantrip. Or Guide does give us Dexterity and gives us Druid spells or cantrips. I haven't even talked about that kind of combo. Like we're going to get real into the weeds there. I think for number 5, I might go with Artisan because that does give us Dexterity and Intelligence. And then Crafter is not too bad. It gives us a lot of extra tool proficiencies, which are useful. And then we can craft a whole bunch of mundane things, which does actually feel kind of appropriate for the rogue. I'm not sure if the discount on non-magical items would be quite as useful, but maybe so. I mean, you could picture, again, your heist crew, needing a bunch of supplies, grappling hooks, and ball bearings, and all those bullshit items that rogues love to use. So I think I put Artisan actually as my number 5. So Criminal, Wayfarer, Soldier, Entertainer, and Artisan are going to be my top 5 backgrounds. All right, talking about species. Number 1, Halfling. Probably for the first time ever, I include Halfling on my top 5. I really hate to lose Dark Vision. Not lose it, but not have it. There's only like 3 species that don't have dark vision. Unfortunately, Halfling is one of them. However, Halfling, we can take the hide action even when you're obscured only by a creature at least one size larger than you, which means if you're, arguing that you're behind your human buddy because you're a small species, then you can still take the hide action. Or, of course, as a rogue, we can take it as a bonus action. Also gives us luck, which is when we roll a 1 on the d20, you can re-roll the die. Must use the new roll. That helps us really when we're shitting the bed on our attack rolls and combos well with lucky. And advantage on saving throws against being frightened is useful because our wisdom saves probably aren't very good. So honestly, all of those, basically the naturally stealthy one, really helps rogues quite a bit. I do miss the dark vision because similar to the ranger, we're probably going to be, unless we have a ranger in the party, we're going to be one of the big scouts of the party. And not having dark vision is going to be painful for that. Number 2 does have dark vision, which is the elf. I think elves also make great rogues. They've got dark vision. They've got advantage on charm, which is the other coin of the halfling advantage, I guess, which is another common mental ailment that can affect us. And I think all 3 elves are actually pretty great for rogues. Either super dark vision, 120 feet. Prestidigitation is a fine cantrip, but really, guess what? We can finish a long rest and take any cantrip we want from the wizard spell list. So hello, True Strike. Or what if just your speed increases to 35 feet, which is very useful for the rogue who needs to get into position. I think all the spells are pretty solid. So elf, also just thematically cool, I think, an elvish rogue. Number 3, I'm going with the other small species, the gnome. Gnome's got dark vision, has advantage on all our mental saves, which is intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These are all going to be most likely... Actually, no, intelligence, our intelligence save is probably pretty good. But wisdom, not until that one level where we get the wisdom save. But that's proficiency and not advantage. So advantage does stack very well with proficiencies. Even though we have proficiency in these ones, having advantage is still way, way better. Also, free spells is kind of nice. Minor illusion, speak with animals, or mending and prestidigitation by making a little clockwork thing that can basically do the little prestidigitation. I really hate saying that fucking word. It's too many syllables. We're gonna nuke some of those. That's my top 3. After that, it gets a little trickier to decide what I want. I don't anticipate getting hit as much. So the dwarf defense doesn't matter as much. Human, of course, is fine for everybody, but we like the dark vision. Orc, we can already bonus action dash. And again, we don't plan on getting hit too much to make the relentless endurance a thing. Tiefling, I don't really care too much about the damaging cantrips. Resistance is fine. Dark vision is good. Dragonborn, dark vision is good. The flight is good. But the breath weapon is not as good because that takes our action and we can't... We don't get to take advantage of the extra attack like a lot of other marshals can do with having their breath weapon be part of their attack action. So I think my number 4 is actually going to be the Aasimar. They're so awesome. And not for any really particular reason, I guess. Just because I was kind of process of elimination with everybody else. Multiple resistances, dark vision. You can get a minor heal, and it's a bonus action to transform and get like flying or other kind of cool abilities. And I think just having Aasimar Rogue is a very interesting, thing. For the same reason, I think a Tiefling Cleric is kind of interesting. Kind of play against type maybe a little bit. Number 5, I don't know, man. I kind of default to Goliath. I know Goliath does not have Dark Vision, I believe. And them getting bigger does give you more movement, even though we don't really care about the strength checks necessarily. But we are going to be doing attack rolls, so proccing all these different things that proc off attacks. The same reason as Ranger, Fighter, Barbarian are always very useful. I wouldn't necessarily use the thing that uses my reaction because I've got other things for reaction, but the teleport could be useful. It just kind of depends on what subclass I'm playing and what I'm looking for. There's a lot of good, giant options for the different lineages, I think. So I think that's what's going to be my number 5, ahead of Human, which gives me an extra origin feat. Although, if I don't get the lucky feat with my background, which I may not, I think Human becomes more attractive because then you can take the lucky feat with your Human pick. But Human also gives you more skill proficiencies, which I care less about as rogues. I've got a bunch. And then the Heroic Inspiration is fine. But I don't know. I think Goliath's a little bit more fun. So I think my top 5 would be Halfling, Elf, Gnome, Aasimar, and then Goliath. But Human is kind of right there with him. All right, we've made it this far. Now it is time. We'll see if we can get this done or if we have to do it in-game because the character monster is giving me fits, absolute fits lately, to make our custom 2024 Rogue. Let's cross our fingers and hope we can make this happen. So my idea is to make an Arcane Trickster because that just seems like a really fun one to make. Let's see, we need a Rogue, which is going to be here. Player's Handbook 2024 is correct. We want to make a level 3, and I want to make an Arcane Trickster Rogue from the 2024 Player's Handbook because I think the spells are really nifty. What do we get to choose? We get Expertise. We get, I bet it's Weapon Mastery is what we're picking here. Yep. Weapon Mastery, I don't know what we're using. Probably a short sword and let's say a short bow, perhaps, with those two. Let's go next. For our species, I think I'm going to go with Gnome for my species. I really like the Gnome. And I think I want to go with the Forest Gnome specifically because I'm picturing somebody who kind of charms and takes advantage of like critters and creatures. So the backstory with this particular gnome is probably there's a very free-loving, chaotic gnome, not necessarily like cruel or evil in any way, but just almost like a kinder, hopefully not as big of a pain in the ass, where they just like don't really care too much about the laws, man, in terms of like, oh yeah, I want to talk to animals, and I really like nature, and animals don't give a shit about like stealing from people or anything. Obviously, I would tail that back a bit and not be a total disruption to the party, but definitely like favor animals and but do so in a way that I'm not a druid or a ranger. I'm just somebody who kind of gets into shenanigans and maybe lets the animals like rob people and steal from them and something like that. The classic like urchin with the animal companion. Hello to Disney's Aladdin, in other words. So our lineage choice is going to be the Forest Gnome, so we get access to speak with animals. Our spellcasting ability will be Intelligence for that. For our background, we can kind of choose whatever we want. I'm thinking we care about intelligence a lot. And so unfortunately, Guide, which would give us extra druid stuff, I believe does not give us intelligence. We are going Arcane Tricksters, don't necessarily have to go Sage. I mean, I can make Criminal work. Right? I think we can. Maybe we got arrested one time. Like maybe we just like all our shenanigans get us into trouble, and we're constantly like in trouble with the law because they just don't understand that we're really liking like Disney's Aladdin. We get the shakedown and everything. So not necessarily some like. In other words, I'm not like the scarred like just hardened criminal. I'm just like happy go lucky like they got me again kind of a criminal. So that's the kind of angle I'm going with here. But Criminal, of course, my number 1 was ranked because of Dexterity, Constitution, and Intelligence. And I realize I'm doing this when the sun goes down, so it's gotten darker and darker as I've been doing this video. It's a race against time to get this done. All right, we get to roll some stats. So, interestingly enough, because we're going True Strike, we really want to have a good Intelligence, even though our spellcasting ability might not necessarily care too much about Intelligence, depending on what spells I take. We still want to have a very good Dexterity, though. So we really care about those 2 stats more than anything else. So with that being said, we're going to now roll all. Okay, that's a pretty good roll. One really bad stat, but we got a 15, 13, 12, 7, 16, and 13. That certainly gives us some options, and our 3 stats, Dex, Con, Intelligence, means I think we're going to be looking pretty good for all of our stats. You know what I haven't thought of is feats. So I haven't thought of if there's going to be any +1 feat that I want to take. For example, that would add a +1 to my dexterity or my intelligence later on. Would be pretty important, because right now we could put like a 16 in dex, a 15 in intelligence. We'll put our, gosh, what would our 7 be? You know what? Our 7 is strength. We're a gnome. I'm okay with a really bad strength, because a dexterity, you could argue with the DM, like, I can use acrobatics and athletics here. But charisma, he's kind of happy-go-lucky. He talks to animals. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's 12, and then 13 whiz, 13 constitution. And what we can do, obviously, is add a point to intelligence. So now, guess what? Our intelligence just as good as our dex here. Add a point to our constitution, getting that a +2. Then I would have to do some research, which I honestly haven't done that, to truth be told, to put this 1 point in either dex or intelligence, depending on if there's a better one down the road that's like, hey, this gives you +1 dex and also gives you this feature, or this one gives you +1 intelligence. I'm probably going to go ahead and put it in dex for now, because I think the dex feats are going to be more common. And I'm okay with my dex being 18, even though I'm using like a 16 intelligence to do my attack. That's not going to be too terribly much of a difference there. So let's go with that. I'm liking that stat distribution. So let's click next. We have all kinds of skills. Criminal gives us sleight of hand and stealth. So let's get acrobatics. Let's grab perception. Let's get persuasion or deception. Maybe both, honestly. Because he kind of like lies his way out of problems and is happy-go-lucky and stuff. So I could see that going a thing. Yeah, let's take the charisma ones, because our charisma wasn't too bad, right? Charisma wasn't too bad. So that gives us a lot of skill proficiencies. And then expertise. I mean, you got to choose stealth. I don't know what rogue would not choose stealth. And then maybe acrobatics, actually. Somebody who gets, stealthing, but also gets their way around tricky places. I guess you could argue sleight of hand, but we'll choose those two. I mean, we're going to get more at level 6 anyway, so we'll have plenty of crazy good spells. All right, Moment of Truth. We only choose 2 cantrips, remember, because we get Mage Hand automatically. We have to choose that one. And then Minor Illusion and Speak with Animals are part of being a gnome. So we've got a lot of good spells already. I definitely want to choose True Strike, which is going to cause us to scroll all the way down here. Crap, I didn't click on it. Let's do it again. Can I use the scroll thing? True Strike. All right, click the plus this time. There we go, True Strike. And then for the other one, I think maybe like a message or something. Is that being useful if you're, in the middle of somebody's house and you need to get an important, like, oh no, I've been caught by the cops kind of situation. All right, so again, True Strike build. We're going to plan on using True Strike every single turn as our attack cantrip. The only reason we wouldn't use it if we were in like a silent situation or something, but I think that would be really well with this build, because we could use our intelligence, which will be a +3 to attack, still take advantage of our dexterity in terms of initiative and armor class as well. Then we can choose to do radiant damage, and then also add that extra damage when we start getting to level 5. We also start with some spells. Well, I just talked about how we're going to be all about the animals and using them to do fun things. We've got Speak with Animals. Well, what better spell is there than Find Freaking Familiar? Right? Now we can summon our true animal companion, really be Aladdin with a boo, although you can't quite have a monkey, I don't think. In fact, what can we have? We can take a lot of different animals with the 2024. A bat, cat, frog, hawk, lizard, octopus, owl, rat, raven, spider, or weasel. Fantastic. Like, that's a ton of cool options. But you can see where I'm like the thief character with the animal companion. I really like that combo quite a bit. And then I don't really necessarily want to choose spells that I want to use in combat, because I'm going to be attacking and wanting to use my sneak attack as much as possible. So I'm thinking something like Disguise Self would certainly help me in the rogue way. And then probably just some kind of utility travel spell, like a Long Strider or Jump. Jump could be a good one. We'd go with that. And then, eventually when we get close to level 9, it would be nice to take something like a Color Spray or a Sleep or, I don't know, Fairy Fire. Like one of those that you can take advantage of the fact that enemies are actually having to get disadvantage on you while you're disguised, because none of these spells right now, literally none of them care about my, I guess Disguise Self might, I actually don't remember if that one cares about your actual like modifier versus Most of these are just kind of buffs. It does succeed intelligence checking. It's your spell save DC, so I guess that one does matter if it's how good your disguise is technically. So that's it. We just choose our equipment, which we would, yeah, that gives us a short sword anyway, so that's perfectly fine. We've got a million daggers for whatever reason. And that's our character. We'll go with, how about Volpe for, what is that, the Italian for fox, I think. Just do a bunch of silly, like, animal-themed rogue character. Oh, they are. I think it's a fun character. I think it's a neat character concept, and I like the rogue. I like the rogue in 2014 too. I think there's a lot of fun character builds you can do, and I think Arcane Trickster, as well as the new cantrips and all those spells, have some interesting combos with the backgrounds too, with taking spell casting with the rogues. I'm very interested to hear from everybody about what kind of combos I've been missing, or what you've thought of, and can kind of explore on what cool rogue builds that we've got in store. But overall, I think the Rogue got a pretty nice buff in the 2024 edition. All right, everyone, thank you for watching this class video breakdown. You can look for more D&D 2024 content here on the channel, as well as usual live streams and reviews. You can support my work at patreon.com/RogueWatsons. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brennan, Zenstein, Eclectic Role Player, Christopher, Gory, Big Nut, John F., John L., Nathan, Chris Lake, Counselor, Andrew, The Reldron, Stephanie, Jason, Ismail, Ahmet, Lumpy Spuds, Warden, Harold, Unimoni, LLC, Tom, AJ, The Eating the Dogs, Caleb, Nicholas, Marcus, and Howard, and Gold patrons RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Diddles at Lounge, Jerome, Nathan, Faucet, Tortoise, Scott, Rufus, Jerry, Glenn, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support.